men. And as usual, I use the term most loosely. Next project on the bench is this here engine. This is a mid-60s era 900. The owner was driving along one day, he said, and the rear chain broke or came off the sprocket or something. Anyway, the chain, of course, got jammed up under the sprocket cover, busted the sprocket cover. From outside, it doesn't look like there's anything else wrong with it, but he says it's shifting weird and the trans is making some funny noises, so he thinks he broke something. Anyway, he pulled it out of the bike, wants me to take a look at the trans. So let's pull this bitch apart and see what's wrong with it. The gear shift lever's just kind of stuck on here. The springs in the Paul carrier have some pop to them, so apparently that's not broken. The nut on the main shaft was already loose. Let's get this off. All right, that's all you got to take apart on this side. Let's flip it around and get the primary apart. Well, all the screws look like they're out. It's got oil in it. Don't see any metal flake. That's always a good sign. Hey, let's see what's under here. See, the clutch is dry. People say these things leak all the time. They really don't leak that bad. This clutch looks perfectly dry on the inside. All right, here's the first sign something's up. Probably not supposed to be doing that. I'm sure I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. You can't just run two 5/16, 18th bolts into the threads on the sprocket. The bolts will come out the other side, they'll hit the crankcase and push the sprocket off. But they will dick up the crankcase to a certain degree, which I think is undesirable. Some people don't care, but I prefer not to do that. This one's pretty tight on there. And there it goes. This bearing is unshielded. Some are shielded on one side, some are shielded on both sides, and some aren't shielded at all. I don't know that you need the shielding. But anyway, this one doesn't have it. I've seen them both ways. Yeah, this thing has got fresh grease around it, which leads me to believe somebody wasn't in there that long ago. And see this little waterfall, little oil fall coming out of this hole? What that means to me is that the engine, the crankcase, is full of oil. Probably right between these two. Otherwise, it'd have been coming out of here too. So you got a crankcase full of oil. It could have either drained down from the tank or the engine might be wet sumping. Hard to tell. And we'll be ready for the money shot in just a minute or two. All right, let's give it a little tappy tap tap. Not coming off too easily. We get the little bit more serious tapping device. There we go. See, now this is interesting because the alignment dowels have both cleared the trapdoor. So this thing really should pop out with very little effort. And it really is not. Huh. So, something must be broken in there. What that something is, I don't know. Something is not happy in there. Huh. Huh. All right. I went around on the opposite side over here, picked the snap ring out of the end of the main shaft bearing race over here, and pulled all the rollers out one at a time. The theory being that I've got a little more free play in this thing, and hopefully that'll let me get it out of there. Let's see what happens now. Oh, and it comes right out. Beautiful. That's what you want. Uh-oh. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. 4 broken teeth. Let's take a close look at it, see what actually happened. All right. Trapdoor cracked. 4 broken teeth. 1 from here, 1, 2, 3 from here. This gear, this tooth has been showing some wear for quite a while. This tooth has been showing some wear for quite a while. So has this tooth. This tooth, and this tooth all have irregular wear on them. So although this literally happened instantaneously, there's been a problem here for quite a while. Anyway, we'll pull these shafts out, put them on the lathe, and see if they're bent. I'm willing to bet the main shaft is bent. Sprocket shaft, counter shaft, maybe not bent, but we'll see. Anyway, due diligence says you have to check them. Okay, here's the main shaft set up between centers in the lathe. Let me get the one low spot at 0 here. So about just a little over 4. You know, that's not horrible, but it's not good either. The trouble with something like this is the gears are going to be tight at this spot of revolution, and then over here they're going to be loose. The bearings at this end, well, after I took these bearings out, I was able to knock the shaft out. So that tells me the shaft was probably binding on those bearings because it was bent. So he's going to get a new one of these. Okay, here's the counter shaft between centers. Well, that's about... Let's pick the high spot and zero it. That's about 3/1000ths out. You know, once again, not horrible, but, you know, bad enough to cause a problem. So I guess he's going to get a new counter shaft too. Sucks to be this owner. There's more than one way to check run out. Here's another way. Between centers, I think, is more accurate because there is some error in this chuck. I know this chuck has some run out in it, but just for entertainment purposes. So that's bouncing around, about 5 thou, 6 thou, maybe 7. The chuck has probably got 2 or 3 thou run out in it, so, you know, I don't regard this. This is not why I would tell the guy he needs a new shaft. I would tell the guy he needs a new shaft because when I check the run out between centers, it's no good. Doing it between centers takes the chuck error out of the equation. Whoa. Yeah, you could kind of see in through here. Whoa, that's bad. Interesting. Yeah, this is definitely no good. Men, and once again, I use the term loosely. Well, it's been at least a few days, several days since that motor transmission was taken apart, and we're going to conclude this video and conclude this project here shortly. This particular owner had this extra engine, and we ended up taking a trans out of this thing and using quite a lot of the parts out of that to fix this other one. I'm showing you this because it's got some interesting kinds of things going on. If you see these welds back in here, the whole corner of this crankcase has been blown out and welded back in. Kind of like one of my weld jobs. Not necessarily the prettiest thing, but it looks like the welds have good penetration. It was welded from both sides. It looks like it should be a pretty good repair. There's some other things wrong with this crankcase that make it undesirable as far as using this engine again. Let's take a look at those couple of things. Chief among the couple of things is this. This crankcase has been busted out in through here, and you know, how does it get like this? I don't know, but there's a screw hole here that's completely gone. This is all cracked out. Did it happen when this trans blew up the first time? I don't know. There's a few other little things I've seen, some of which are on the bottom, and I'm not gonna flip it over for you. Is it savable? Yeah, I'm sure it is. It'd be a rough job though. But anyway, on to his engine he's driving. So let's take a look at that one. Okay, here's the motor he's driving. Obviously, I've installed the transmission already. The main shaft, the counter shaft, the trapdoor, the counter shaft drive gear, the shifter fork shaft, let's see, maybe a shifter fork, and maybe a gear or two were stolen out of the other engine and put in here. I just took the best parts of each to make a good one. I had, test fitted everything, and the shifting was a little goofy on this trans. And what I found out was that the shifter shaft, the shifter fork shaft, was a little bit bent. So, when this thing shattered, those gears, it bent a lot of stuff on the inside. And if you ever run across a trans that had, that kind of damage where gears broke and teeth got jammed in there, you really need to check the run out on everything to make sure it's all straight. Couple of other fitment notes. This is an aftermarket trapdoor, and the alignment pins, alignment dowels, and the shafts all seem to line up just fine. But the bowl holes were off by quite a bit, and I'm going to try to get you a close-up of that in just a minute. The bowl holes were all off by quite a bit, and these holes have been enlarged quite a bit to accommodate that. And I'm going to be using hardened bolts, grade 8s, washers, lock washers, and bolts on this thing, because the holes are so big that if you just tighten a soft washer up against this thing, it's going to want to suck it into the hole, and it's going to get bent, and it's just not going to be as good as it could be. When fitting something like this part of the trapdoor was hitting the crankcase and wanting to shove it all out of alignment. So this was all ground off, sanded off in through here to make it fit correctly. Let's take a look at those bolt holes now. Okay, I'm hand holding the camera, so it might be a little wobbly. So let's look at the holes in the trapdoor and see how they line up with the crankcase. This one is not too bad. This one is off by quite a bit. I'm sure it's probably hard to tell, but this one's off by quite a bit. This one on the bottom here is off by quite a bit. And this other one on the bottom is also off by quite a bit. So the bowl holes in the trapdoor are significantly oversized to accommodate the misalignment. Fortunately, the dowel pins and the shafts all seem to line up pretty good. When I was test fitting this thing, one of the things I look at is where the main shaft comes through on the sprocket side. And you could tell, just eyeballing it, if it's centered in the bearing race. And if there was a severe alignment problem, you could tell when you get it together, because you'd hear you see, you can't even really hear it rotating. If the shafts are too close together because something is misaligned, you'll hear the teeth hitting each other. So they're pretty good. The counter shaft 2 ended up pretty much in the middle of the needle bearing hole on the other side. And you got to realize when these things are supported on one end, they flop around quite a bit on the other end. But that all looked good. So if you recall from the K model video, I had to do a lot of dicking around with the dowel pins, and they were not lined up at all. So I ended up bolting the case down, drilling new holes in for the dowel pins, and actually remaking them so that they would line up. Anyway, this is good to go. Let me show you one other thing that I thought was kind of humorous. The pawl carrier had this bolted between the pawl carrier and the trapdoor. It's a spacer, okay? And this is not unusual. And the guy who put it together, in fact, did correct. It needed to have spacers in there, but used a piece of gasket paper. You know, that's not really a suitable spacer for something that's under load inside that motor when you're shifting gears. You know, this is going to deteriorate, it's going to soften up, and the pawl carrier is going to get loose. So, you know, Harley sells spacers. Well, I don't know if Harley sells them anymore, but there are spacers out there. But if you're going to do something like this, make it out of a piece of sheet metal. Get you know, a hunk of galvanized down at the hardware store or whatever. Get some Pepsi cans or something. Stack them up. I happen to have the official spacers that Harley sold for him back in the day. But, you know, once again, the desperation, you know, it's Friday night and you want to go out riding Saturday and you're going to slap anything together to get it to work. Well, it'll work, but, you know, for how long is always the question. Anyway, I also ended up, just FYI, I also ended up line honing the sprocket side bearing race to the main shaft. As you recall, when I pulled it apart, this shaft did not want to pull out of the other side of the case. And when I put it back together again, the bearings fit, but I mean just barely fit. There was really no, as a matter of fact, I did put a dial indicator on it and checked it. There was no free play in the sprocket shaft side of the main shaft at all. So I ended up putting the honing device in there and honing out about 1/1000th and a half of metal off of the race to get a good fit on there. And during my test fitting, the door came off and on pretty easily. So anyway, that wraps up this transmission project. All in all, not too bad of a job. It was a lot of fun. But this guy is, this owner is getting a good solid trans out of this deal. He should be happy with it. And for now, I am out of here. Hey, thanks for watching and please subscribe.